A warm welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel. A very important video today because we're going to go through every different format of car protection product and explain the differences, the advantages and disadvantages of each of those formats and which ones are going to be the most suitable for you and your requirements of how you want to maintain and protect your car. This video will be placed in a detailing fundamentals playlist on the homepage of this channel with all the other detailing fundamentals where you can learn how to wash your car properly, machine polish it properly, decontaminate it properly and all that sort of stuff. The machine fundamentals playlist is an essential part of this channel. Another essential part is the playlist, the best of videos where we do all the mega tests, and we also have individual product reviews and stuff like that. So let's put this down here, guys, and let's crack on. There's going to be a lot of information here, so let's just make sure we've got a good pan there of all of the products, and I'll come round. Okay, don't also forget, please, we have an online detailing fundamentals course, which is a more structured, condensed online course, 5 or 6 modules. And it costs, when you put the deals in, without the deals it's usually about 30 or 40 quid, but there's deals all the time where you can get it for like 15, 20 quid. I'll put the information in the description, and also don't forget we have a Patreon page where you can come and join and support the channels on different tiering levels with different rewards, and support the channel if you're really into it. Now let's start, guys. Before we move on and talk about all of these protection products, something that's really important to understand, one fundamental rule of detailing is that how your car looks is really down to the quality of the clear coat or paintwork on your car if it's pre-clear coat. But let's just assume car paintwork is, you know, primer, paint and clear coat. Clear coat is that transparent, hard layer that provides gloss and shine and protects the paint underneath, and clear coat has UV protectors in it to stop the paint fading underneath it. We know that clear coat degrades over time. If you take a 25-year-old car, for example, it will not look as good as freshly laid clear coat that's done well. It just ages. It can fail, crack, peel, all that sort of stuff. Now, the name of the game is maximising the quality of your clear coat. So what happens with car paintwork is lots of times cars are left out in the elements. They get rained on, they get driven, they get chipped and abraded on at the front. They get washed quite aggressively, which can put swirl marks in the paint. Now, all those things are bad for car paintwork systems. The best thing for car paintwork systems is a car to be left inside in a nice environment where it's not too hot, not too cold, and it's away from the elements. But not everyone has garages. So when a car is outside and it's exposed to the elements, the sun, the rain, the dust, the debris, the things that fall on it, the best thing you can do is have fresh, good protection on the paintwork, which makes all of those environmental contaminations, mineral deposits, fallout, tar and glue from the road, you know, tar from the road, sap from trees, cement dust, all of those contamination things that stick to the paintwork and can bond to it and won't just be washed off. It's much harder for them to do so when you've got like a fresh coat of wax or sealant or ceramic coating on there. Okay, so there's some fundamentals for you. Quality of your paintwork is the most important thing, and car protection products are there to really provide a layer between you and the environment so that those contaminants don't get on the car and you don't have to abrade them off and polish your car all the time, all that sort of stuff. So, continuing from that, the oddball in all of these products that are supposed to be protection products that I'm going to mention is abrasives. So abrasives and machine polishing unlock all of the capability of detailing and allow you to maximise the condition of your clear coat, we'll say clear coat paintwork. Now, you use machine polishing to remove deep defects like swirl marks. So if a car goes into a professional detailer and it's covered in swirls, they're going to probably want to cut the paintwork as the most efficient way to remove all the swirls or most of the swirls. Once they've done that, you're going to want to maximise gloss if you're a real aficionado. So you have heavy cutting compounds to remove deeper defects, sanding marks, all that sort of stuff. But to maximise the physical gloss in your paintwork, you have to use finishing products. Like, for example, this Scholl S40 or Koch M2 or Rupes DA Fine or whatever your finishing polish is. What these will do is refine the gloss and maximise the physical gloss in your clear coat. There is no substitute for a finishing polish. It's one of the most important products you could have if you're really looking to get a high gloss finish. Once you've used these products, like for example S40 on a soft pad by machine, buffed up your paint, you are not going to tell the difference really in appearance by putting any of these protection products on. The first fundamental misconception about all of these products is they increase gloss on your paintwork. If your gloss is maximised on good clear coat, these products won't really add that much. If they can, they're doing really well, but they are primarily there to protect. That's the first thing. So John, if I'm interested in machine polishing, you should look at brands like Koch, Scholl. They're probably perhaps my two favourite abrasive brands, German brands. Those products, I find them really easy to use and they don't kind of dust too much. So there's H8 Koch cutting compound. There's Scholl Concepts S40. You also have single stage products which can cut and finish in one. They won't cut as much as a heavy compound. They won't finish as much as a finishing polish. They're somewhere in between, but they're very efficient because you use them with one set. So that's rapid. So Scholl S20, I think, is a really good single stage cut and finish abrasive. In terms of machine polishing, most people are going to be using dual action polishers. We've done videos exploring many of them. I like cordless machines and I like force rotation. I don't have to worry about stall. So I use the Flex XCE most of the time. It's a great machine, this is. Great machine. Okay, it was just important to cover that abrasives are absolutely critical, okay? Then we move on to the first method that you could use to protect and maintain your car. These are all-in-ones. So AIOs. I will say it the wrong way around, AOI. Don't worry. What these are is they contain abrasives. So those abrasives will remove material from your car to remove swirls and beautify and gloss up the finish. So they have that abrasive technology. But they also contain a technology, you know, a protection product. The old school ones can contain wax, newer ones can contain synthetic material, polymers, ceramic material, a big smorgasbord of different materials that you can find in these AOIs, AIOs. What are the advantages of AIOs? They're the most rapid way of cutting, finishing and protecting in one hit. So if time is a consideration, then these are the way to go. If you don't use these, you've got to use your abrasives, you've got to degrease, then go over the paint again with a dedicated sealant or wax or ceramic or whatever. It takes a lot more time and you're repeating everything. That contact time on the panel goes through the roof when you're doing multiple stage polishing and protecting. So that's the advantages of AIOs. What are the disadvantages of AIOs? Well, as an abrasive, they generally won't cut as well. There's a reason you don't want all of these AIOs to be high cut, because if you're just using them casually and putting protection down every couple of months with them, you don't want to be removing lots of clear coat. So they tend to be more like finishing polishes with less amount of abrasives and finer abrasives. So they're better for maintaining than doing full details, generally speaking, okay? The other disadvantage with them is that the protection that they offer is not as good as if you're using dedicated products, okay? At the moment, they're getting better. So here's 3 AOIs, which I really love. The first one is Auto Finnesse Triple. It's an old school wax. It has very little cut, but it smells beautiful, and I love it because you just use small amounts of it on a soft pad and whiz over the paint. I'm not too worried about leaving it to cure for ages, and you just buff it. The buff is so smooth and it smells nice, and it gives a little bit of hydrophobic performance. It's not the best product on the market if I ever tested it, but it's one of my favourites. The Rupes Advanced here uses nanotechnology, and I believe out of all of the products I've seen, it has the best protection from an AOI, and I've compared. We've done a lot of these. I must have done over 50 of these because we've done some PVD mega tests on them. It's my personal favourite. Perhaps the one that I would recommend to you. Lovely finish, lovely buff on it. Also like this 3D Speed with Montan wax in it. Again, a bit of an old school product, but I find it actually has a good level of cut. You know, it's a true one-stage product, so I can use that if I have a bit more work to do, you know, and it's not just maintaining my car, but I want to do a single stage and protect. So there's some different options there. They're 3 cracking products. The next category, so we talked about the advantages and disadvantages. Lots of people at home don't tend to use these because they need machine application to work at their best and most efficient. And lots of people, when they're washing their car, won't be busting out a machine polisher. But for me, it's in the garage after I've washed it, so it suits my requirements quite nicely. You could also control how much clear coat you use by how you operate the machine polisher. Very soft pad, you know, very low speed, and just apply it, and it's more like applying a liquid wax than actually cutting your car. But put a stiffer pad on, operate at higher speeds with a bit more pressure, and you could use it to actually do correction at the same time. So there we go. Great products, but don't maximise the durability as a disadvantage. Next up, we have glazes, or pre-wax cleansers, they can sometimes be called. There is a difference. A glaze is a product you use traditionally, sometimes more often by hand. And what that does is it uses resins that will fill very small scratches in your car. So if you have this hazy paintwork, like black paintwork is an example, you see that white hazing. You rub a glaze with it, it fills all of those fine scratches and brings the quality of your paintwork back up. Doesn't remove deeper swirls and defects, you generally don't use them for paint correction. Glazes were typically something that were very casual and you could use at home and get good results and do a bit of paint correction by hand. And they still are, and they're still popular for that reason. Once you've applied a glaze, those resins set, but you then typically need to seal over the top with a wax or a sealant or something else. Okay, most glazes aren't compatible with ceramic coating, so you wouldn't typically ceramic coat over a glaze because you'll affect the ability for the coating to bond. There are exceptions though with products like Gyeon Primer, and CarPro have one, and stuff like that, where they're ceramic compatible glazes effectively, polishes that leave a resin on the surface that the coating can bond to. So Gyeon Primer, great product. I think my favourite glaze of all time, it hasn't one test I've done it in, but just it's the ease of use, is Poorboys Black Hull for black dark cars. You can use it really on any, but they've got a white equivalent of it. I don't buy into all of that colour thing. But Poorboys Black Hull, why is it my favourite glaze? It's an acrylic glaze. It's so nice to use. You spread it and you wipe it, it smells nice, and it just, as soon as you buff it, it just lifts off in the cloth and you've got a silky finished primed paintwork. And you can just use it like an AOI. The acrylic will stay there for a month or two, you know, you can go again with it. So but it is really a glaze. So what are the disadvantages of glazes? Well, typically they're less abrasive, even more than AOIs, typically. And they need protecting on top, so you can't do everything in one go. But then when you're picking your own protection, you could pick something that's very powerful and very durable. So glazes, very important. Sometimes hear the term pre-wax cleanser. So before you put a wax down, you rub the surface with a pre-wax cleanser, which can be like a glaze. But typically the word cleanser implies that it's got a solvent in there, like maybe a hydrocarbon that's going to degrease, clean the surface, mild abrasives that are going to scrub off the remnants of any old waxes and prepare the paintwork for waxing. But a pre-wax cleanser might not be a glaze. It might not contain any resins. There's a bit of ambiguity there, but a lot of them do. So anyway, you get the idea. Pure abrasives, all-in-ones, glazes, pre-wax cleansers, ceramic primers. These are all very important tools. Next up, paste waxes. So paste waxes are the form of car protection product that have been around the longest. I tend to break up paste waxes into 3 categories, although it should really be 2. Excuse me. Organic paste waxes or old school paste waxes. So basically they contain an organic wax, a carnauba wax, a montan wax, a blend of other waxes, small amounts of paraffin because it's hydrophobic, sometimes small amounts of beeswax because it softens the overall wax blend. What other type of waxes are there? Candelia, synthetic waxes, you know, PE waxes, you know, forms of poly, whatever, plastics. Silicone waxes can be added as well. So you can get all these different types of waxes. Now, if it's organic, it will contain organic waxes and oil, like this product here, Scholl Concepts Premium Vintage Wax, very expensive, high carnauba wax, okay? The disadvantage of organic waxes is because they contain wax and oil, they are attacked and emulsified by strong detergents. So that was the whole pH neutral argument. When we were protecting our cars with organic waxes, a pH neutral mild soap was less likely to break down and emulsify an old school wax. Other disadvantages with paste waxes are that the materials they leave behind, the oil and wax, can attract dust, especially the more oily they are. They can be easily worn away and eroded. They have lower durability, perhaps 1 to 2 months for most organic waxes. They can also be greasy to apply, and in high temperatures very greasy because they're closer to their natural kind of melting point on the car panel. So they can leave like greasy marks on the panels. The advantage of wax is it's a really good user experience and people still love applying paste waxes today, and gloss can be very good. They might be able to add these old school products with the oil really do add a shine and a jetting to the paintwork as well, especially when they're freshly applied. So some people still argue that a paste wax is the best look for your car. Possibly. It's all personal preference. Then we move on to what I call modern waxes, which are generally a mix of an organic wax like carnauba typically, which is a hard resinous wax that's used in most paste waxes. They'll mix them with some synthetic components and they'll reduce or remove oil from the formulation. Typically, not always though, might be some oils in some of these. They'll also add synthetic materials like possibly silicons or siloxanes or SI silicon material, which gets people worried, but you know, it's typically that, or other forms of resin, maybe acrylic resin, other modern components which help reinforce the wax and give it more hydrophobic performance and perhaps even slickness and things like that. Okay, so really modern waxes the sky's the limit, and lots of them, like Autoglim UHD wax, Bilt Hamber double speed wax, Soft 99 Fusso wax, lots of them can compete on durability with fully synthetic modern car products. Okay, can compete. What are the disadvantages of modern waxes? The gloss can be higher on these old school show waxes. They still use wax, and wax can still attract dirt, although there's not much in it. They can be harder to apply if they've got other materials that are setting, so you can get a slightly stiffer buff, a less oily, buttery spread on them as well. So that's some of the disadvantages as well. Paste waxes can be expensive or cheap. A good paste wax should be easy to spread and easy to buff, and give you a nice show finish that you're really happy with. The next type of category, which I'll lump in with waxes, but they're not paste waxes, is liquid waxes. So they're waxes that are dissolved, so this is a solvent-based liquid wax. There's no water in here. The wax is dissolved and a lot more runny, so you can spread it a lot easier. They're slightly lower concentration for me. Typically a wax will be about half, 50-50 solvent and active. So about 50% solvent, anywhere up to 25% carriers, and typically around 25% active ingredient. Active ingredient is what is left behind after you've kind of applied it. It's the stuff that stays. I think you get more solvent in a solvent emulsion, easier to spread. Typically, you lose a bit of the user experience. You lose having that paste wax, that little jar, which is a cool thing that lasts for years. And this is just more of a bit of a bottle. Sometimes I find that the solvent emulsions don't last as long as some of the legendary kind of paste waxes. For example, we know products like Fusso and Double Speed are really durable. There isn't really a liquid emulsion pure wax that competes with that durability. So perhaps they have slightly less durability than what you can achieve with the old school paste waxes. You also have water-based emulsions of waxes, so they contain emulsifier so that you can have a water-based carrier. The disadvantage with water-based waxes is the emulsifier means that the wax is less impervious, or more pervious, to water, so water can degrade it more. So water-based wax emulsions don't last as long as solvent-based ones, typically, because of that emulsifier. Okay, you also have to make sure you apply these to every bit that you want to protect. You wouldn't use them on glass because waxes, can smear and you can see the lines, you can see it through the glass. They might not help. So they're not multi-surface friendly. Typically you want to keep them off trim when you're applying them as well. And they can leave white residue which can collect in any little kind of gaps and crevices. Same with liquid waxes, although typically if it does collect it will buff off a little bit easier. Okay, next we move on to modern car sealants that superseded really paste waxes. Now these are engineered materials typically, and like Ian from Pro Detail has said to me, if scientists and mankind goes and engineers something to outperform something that's organic, typically they're going to succeed, aren't they? They're going to succeed with our understanding of chemistry and materials. We could produce something that's better than an organic material that's grown from trees, the carnivorous carnauba plant or whatever it's called, the carnivora. Keep it serious. So a liquid sealant. Now these can vary in the materials that you use. The first fully synthetic sealants that came along, in my understanding, were acrylic based. So dissolved acrylic resin, like Carlac products, stuff like that, that put a layer of dissolved acrylic resin that dries to a thin film of acrylic, and it's nice and slick and smooth. Acrylic though, if you ever got a piece of acrylic, it's not hydrophobic. So acrylic coatings kind of died a little bit of a death because you didn't really know they were there. They were lovely to use, shine up nice, but you wouldn't know that they were there. So most forms of car sealants use SI material, silicon polymer material, engineered forms of silicon, amino functional silicon that bonds to the paintwork. So waxes don't bond to the paintwork. They're a resin that's dissolved and goes hard and films a hard layer or film, if you like, over the paintwork. These actually bond to the paintwork, or some of them do. So silicon polymers. But there's lots of other forms of car paintwork sealants that can even contain a cocktail of wax and other synthetic material. And we have the introduction of ceramic material into not true ceramic coatings, but materials which are closer to ceramic coatings. They're still SI materials, okay? So the advantages of these are they're not oil-based. They should stand up to detergents a little bit more. They bond. They can be easier to spread, easier to buff. They're not typically cheaper. And you should get better durability, although there's not really that much in it, to be honest. The disadvantages are still some of these synthetic materials don't demonstrate hydrophobicity quite as well as some of these modern ones, although that's as time goes by, all of the companies are really cottoning on that all their products need to bead and be ultra hydrophobic. Some modern sealants the applications where they bond and dry can be a nightmare, and they haven't got that right, and you've got to be really careful with them, or they can smear. So you've got to take it on a product by product basis. But you would opt for a paintwork sealant if you're noticing like dust build up on your car, or sometimes with paste waxes you can get this cloudiness, especially when there's lots of carnauba in it, in the surface, when there's high humidity. That's not a curing issue. What that is as the surface of the wax gets hot, you know, closer to its natural melting point, it doesn't go into a liquid again, but it gets softer. And when there's humidity in the air, that humidity is drawn to the wax, so then you get this layer of mist that you can wipe off over the car. But it's a bit of a nightmare if you've waxed your car, it looks lovely. Day later, it's gone all misty and you've got to go over it and buff it. Depends. For some people, that's a disaster. For other people, it's not the end of the world, and they just go over it with a detail spray. But there you go. We're giving you all the advantages and disadvantages. So polymer sealants, I don't tend to use them too much. But this Jesscar Ultralock Plus, I really love it. Not because it's especially hydrophobic, but because it is durable. But again, it's the buff. Something that's very important to me is when I'm, you know, when the car's all been cleaned and washed and ready to be sealed, I don't want a product that's difficult to work with. The buff has to be sweet for me, and that's what I'm looking for. And that's got a really sweet buff on it. It's Ultralock. I do make sure I keep shaking it all the time. Another disadvantage is with synthetic materials is sometimes they can spoil, and that can happen with this product as well. So I always keep it shaken and try not to let it roast or freeze. Okay, so we've done everything down to polymer sealants now. The next thing is ceramic coatings. Now, ceramic coatings, how long have they been around for? Well, 10 years ago there was not so many people offering them when I started the channel, and there was like your Car Pros, your Gyeons, your G-Technic, that were these modern ceramic coating brands, your Carbon Collectives, your Ceramic Pros. There wasn't all that many brands. Now, virtually every single detailing brand sells you a ceramic coating as well. What is a ceramic coating? Well, a ceramic coating is not really ceramic as such. It's not really SiO2 as such, silicon dioxide. It's a specialty resin that was initially made out in the Far East for various applications. We talked about this before: coil coatings, anti-graffiti on trains, skyscraper building facades. So they would spray it, they had barrels of it, and spray it on the facades, so they were easier to clean and maintain. Glass on skyscrapers as well, and stuff like that, industrial applications. And then someone figured you could put this resin onto paintwork. Okay, it's an inorganic resin. That first wave of ceramic coatings was all using this inorganic resin, which was a silicon nitrogen-based material held in a carrier that prevented it from curing. And when you place it on the paintwork, the carrier disappears, exposes the silicon and nitrogen-based resin to hydrogen and oxygen in the moisture in the air, and that causes a chemical reaction or a state change in the material to a silicon and oxygen based material, a quartz-like material that cures. And that material is a lot harder than traditional paste waxes and sealants, and it offers certain surface characteristics of self-cleaning, you know, the anti-graffiti, anti-fouling properties. Now, the first wave of coatings tended to use this same resin, and the problem with that resin was the hydrophobic performance on it was low. So you'd put it on your car, you'd have a material which would last 5 years or 10 years, depending on how the concentration of the active ingredients, the resin, the solids, but you wouldn't necessarily see a difference. You know, it would be, yeah, okay, it's sheeting a bit of water off, but my paste wax does that, and we have paste waxes which can last a year. And after 3 months of the car being exposed to the elements, the hydrophobic performance can get hidden and masked, you know. So coatings initially weren't very expensive for the little bottle when you use half the bottle, and if you don't use the other half, it will go off in 3 months. Difficult to apply if you over apply the resins, let it cure too much, high spots, and a nightmare to remove if you mess up the application. if you also have paintwork needed doing, you have to remove those sometimes. And I would want to get the ceramic coating off before it goes to the body shop, because the body shop they TFR cars, you know, to get the material off, but it won't get it off, and they won't be able to see it. And then you grind it all up in the old sanding discs. And then when you spray your car, you can have little blistering and problems. So, you know, coatings can be problematic, and these are still some of the downsides of coating today. But the positives of coating is that the core material which bonds to your car, state changes into a hard material, lasts longer. And it has improved self-cleaning. So you notice the dirt peel with a fresh ceramic coating. Nowadays, ceramic coatings have been around so long that the chemistry of them changes. The core resins that I'm talking about, there's a range of them, different types of resins, and you're seeing that now all the time, new core resins on coatings. So traditionally, it's harder to work out what core resins are being used. These inorganic resins are compatible with other resins. So a coating is not a simple single resin. It usually has inorganic resins with organic resins. So they could add a silicon, organic or inorganic resin in there. Fluorine, it can be an additive for ceramic coatings. Forms of silicon, siloxane can be an additive. Why are they adding those? Because they can make them slicker, they can make them bead more, things like that, okay? Modern coatings are pretty impressive nowadays. They can give you what you want. If you want a beady coating, you can have it. If you want a hydrophobic one, if you want a hydrophilic one, you can have it. We've talked about the disadvantages, the advantages, durability, self-cleaning, all that sort of stuff. I don't tend to use ceramic coatings because I'm forever pampering and testing my car. In my world, the Golf, for example, that gets beaten up, doesn't have the best paint. That would be the best thing probably to coat, because I'd never touch it, and it might just help keep it clean. You know, coat the wheels, coat the glass, coat everything, and then just wash it with a ceramic shampoo. You know, so it's actually perhaps, if you're really into maintaining your car, that the coating is perhaps less suitable. You can't utilise, if I've got a coating on my car, next week I can't go and shine up my paintwork with S40 to get my gloss, physical gloss, back up to the top, because I've got to go through the coating to shine up the paint. Yes, there are some advanced sealants that you can, like the Car Pro have got them. You could use primer, a bit like that. You can use Rupes Advanced to repair a ceramic coating. It will sit there and not go through it, which is interesting. But so I've given you the advantages and disadvantages, okay? There are also lightweight ceramics that, like Gyeon Can Coat, Tack Moonlight, Adams have got one. Everyone's got one. The key to know that it's a lightweight ceramic is it's not water-based. It's like a ceramic coating, but it's diluted down with more carrier oils, so that your material that's curing is less solid, but it's nice and easy to apply, and it's easier to get off, but you don't get the durability, okay? So typically a high professional grade coating will contain more of those active ingredients, so that when you put a layer of it over there, whatever is bonding and curing to the paintwork is a higher solid. The disadvantages of that is if you mess up the install and you over apply it and you've got high spots, they can be more difficult to remove. But typically nowadays, even the professional coatings, you know, 10 years ago, you needed to be worried if you were using a professional coating. Nowadays, you can get coatings which are 5 to 7 years, which you wouldn't know the difference. They're so easy to apply. I was testing one the other day. So yeah, coatings are pretty cool. Next up, we move away from this specialty resins and we go to perhaps the most commonly used type of car protection. That is the water-based spray sealant. Now, these used to be spray waxes back in the day when wax was prevalent, maybe 15, 20 years ago. There's lots of spray waxes. So it was water-based wax emulsions in a spray that you could spray on. They still exist. Typically, I've got an example of a water-based spray wax, which is Turtle Wax Seal and Shine. And this is a wax emulsion mixed with siloxane, you know, which is a speciality form of silicon, if you like, or PDMS, whatever you want to call it, that's mixed in with the wax, forms a film, and then that film does actually bond to the paintwork, but it's still very easy to apply, very forgiving, and you just spray it on. You know, you can use them really casually and just spray them and wipe them, but they look good and they last for ages, and they're relatively cheap, like £9. So a lot of people have moved to these spray products. But I think in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a shift to spray waxes which don't contain any organic wax, and they're a liquid, water, maybe some solvent, siloxane, and then perhaps some modern additives like SiO2 material and graphene, the dispersion of graphene, to give you the latest technologies, apparently. You know, SiO2, nice and slick, you know, low friction, graphene as well, anti-fouling. So people go for the modern technology, whether it's true or not. And you do have some fantastic products like this recently discovered Collenite Beadcote, which does the lot. You spray it on and it wipes off like a silky wax. It's just beautiful. And then your car paintwork beads like absolute crazy and feels all slick and smooth. And it's so easy to apply. So lots of people, I think now, these ceramic sealants, beadcoat, spray waxes have replaced and are more favourable than traditional paste waxes and sealants, you know, and the old, you know, emulsion type sealants. Indeed, when I quizzed my patrons, about 66%, 2/3, use this format of product to maintain their car. The next format, similar to the spray wax, is the spray and rinse product. So when the car's been washed and it's covered in water, rather than dry it all off and wipe something, spread something over every panel and buff it to a shine, that's too much work for some people. For me sometimes as well, when I just maintain my car. So you get these products that you go and spray all over your car when it's wet and then just blast it off with a pressure washer, or low pressure, some of them. And then you dry the car and it's nice and easy to dry. So these are very concentrated forms of siloxane, sometimes with hardeners in them, that can do all sorts of stuff. Sky's the limit. Some of them can still contain wax. But you know, you spray them on and you haven't got to like spread them. So they're for the really lazy person, or the person with not much time. You know, I'm not insulting anyone that likes them. I like them. The disadvantage of those is you've got to be careful over applying them and using them every week. You've got to be careful with them on glass, because they can sometimes smear. You know, you haven't prepped the glass properly at the point they hit the glass. They go everywhere, so you might not want them over your scuttle because you've got, for whatever reason, you might have ceramic coated them and you don't want a wax emulsion over it or whatever. So they go everywhere, and the films they form are very concentrated. When you apply them onto the paint, you do not want them to dry because they can dry rapidly. So once you get the basics of how to use them, have your gun ready in one hand, on, spray off, next panel on, spray off, then give it a good buff when you dry it to collect any excess, you're generally okay, and they can be really, really good. I think what are the disadvantages? Like I've said, the excess film. If you do get it wrong and you put too much on, even if you spray it off quickly and dry it, sometimes in certain lights you can see that opaque film. If you spray it onto a warm panel and you get like a mist of it go on, that can bond immediately, and even though you wipe it later on, you might be looking at that rear quarter panel in the sun and you see like a weird tiger skin pattern of the footprint of the products and stuff like that. So there is a compromise. It's a bit like painting a wall. If you get your paintbrush out and you've prepped the wall, you've sanded it, you've hoovered it, you've covered it in sugar soap and wiped it, you've caulked all the edges, and you then go and paint it, and you've got good quality paintbrush, and you do your edges, and then you roller it all properly, you get a good finish. You get a bucket of paint and stick a grenade in it, pull the pin, you know, the finish might not be quite as good. So you understand a little bit about why the advantages and disadvantages. Next up, in a similar fashion, are washes and waxes, or ceramic shampoos, or hydrophobic shampoos. So these are surfactants that you can put in your bucket, you know, foam them up and clean your car, but they also contain siloxane or materials or waxes that protect your car as you're washing it. Bit like the spray and rinse. You do have to be careful with them. Don't over concentrate them. We're going to be doing a comparison. I've got 12 now market leading ceramic shampoos, that contact wash shampoos that also have protection, rather than spray and rinse snow foams or spray and rinse type ceramic products, if you like. These, what are the advantages? Well, if you're really lazy, if you've got your Golf that sits there that I don't care about, I should really wash it with one of these because it'll add some protection at the same time and I won't even have to do anything. So there's the ultra lazy guy, you know, the guy that perhaps isn't into all of this detailing and thinks this is all crazy. I'm not going to be spending 3 hours polishing my car with a machine on a Saturday or whatever. I just want to wash it and go and protect it. They're great for that type of person. But also, if you had a coating on your car, for example, we know the hydrophobic performance is going to diminish even if the coating's still there. You wash it with a product like this, it will stay all beady and fresh and you get all that zingy effect and it's easier to dry, and they're compatible with coatings if you buy one from a coating manufacturer, and they can have self-cleaning and stuff like that. They are expensive though, don't over apply them. You know, be very careful with them. That's your ceramic shampoos, okay? And ceramic foams, if you like. You could assume that there's pre-washes that have that in there, but typically you want to clean the car before you put protection on it, don't you? So ceramic pre-washes are potentially not as a good idea for me, but ceramic spray and rinse, you know, through lances, yeah, similar sort of thing to a shampoo, but you don't contact wash it. Finally, you have quick detailers, also sometimes referred to as drying aids. I think of a quick detailer as a tool to finish off your car, primarily for me. So once I've washed it, perhaps, I know I've put fresh protection on it a month ago, but when I'm washing the car, I just spritz over some quick detailer on the roof and just shine the roof up. You know, if I see any smudge marks, so I lean on it. If there's a little water spot there, a fresh water spot or a soap spot, I spray the quick detailer on it and buff that panel out to give me that final finished kind of car after I've washed it. A quick detailer should be versatile. You could spray it over a bit of trim like this Bilt Hamber QD and it will shine up that trim and add a little thin layer of material which tops up protection and gives you shine and some protection boosts. Yes, when the car's out in the sun as well, you can, after you've washed it, you can quickly mist all over it with a quick detailer. That will reduce the risk of getting water spotting and make the drying a little bit easier. And it's a lubricant as well. If there's any dirt kicking around and you spray any bits of dust or whatever and you spray the QD all over it, it's going to provide a little bit of lubrication. And indeed, Bilt Hamber QD, for example, contains that charged polymer technology, you know, amphoretic material, surfactant material, which helps encapsulate the dirt. You still got to be careful. These products, you know, can't save you from stupidity. If you're buffing hard on paintwork when you're drying it, you catch a bit of dirt that you've missed, you can still scratch. So just be careful. You get the idea. So I recommend Bilt Hamber QD. I mix it down 1 to 9 with DI water. You can go 1 to 20 and really plaster it all over the car. These can also be used as clay lubes, although I don't recommend that because they leave material behind. You can use this as an interior dressing. You can use it as a plastic dressing. You could probably clean glass with it. I think spray it over the glass, you'd be fine. The way we're going now is ceramic detailers, so they're a bit more potent. They contain ceramic material which is slicker when you buff, and they can contain more hydrophobic material. So they're looking to give you all the bling. So a ceramic detailer is more expensive than a traditional detailer, but you should get the bling from it, and some people swear by them. They're almost so good, these ceramic detailers, like this Gyeon one. You could almost just polish your car out with the S40 and then just every wash go over it with a ceramic detailer and you'd be fine. You could use this after applying this like a sealant, go over it and then just use it every wash and you'll be absolutely fine. So there's all ways of doing it. What are the disadvantages? They're expensive and they can be high on active ingredients like this. You do want to be careful, not use too much, especially on a dry car. So there you go. There's all your swings and roundabouts, guys. What do I like to do? Well, I have a black E36. you know, that you've seen before. And I'll come around and get the camera. Let me grab the camera. It's not clean, actually. I've been out in the rain, so I can see some little water spots on the roof and the sides of the panels, but they're not, they'll just wash off. But what I typically do is I like to keep this car really clean and really kind of, you know, buzzing and shiny and protected. I like to, so say next time I wash this car, I've got a bit of a mismatch of different protection products on it. I would wash it with a pure shampoo, dry it all off without any material, any product. Just dry it all off, get it into the garage. And my plan would be, I won't use the S40 because I've already done that. My next plan would be to go over it with black hull, glaze it all up, and then put this over the top. But historically, I'd have just gone over and glazed it all up with black hull and just left it, because that final buff, you know, you're going over with the black hull, with the machine, you put a thin layer over it and you buff it and it's all shiny and you get it all off. And you're done. You're sort of done. And I like to do that very frequently, especially with this car in the summer. In the winter, yeah. Well, I definitely, you know, I might go over it with the black hull and then put this on, or I might, you know, sometimes I've used Gyeon Primer and gone with the Sealant Shine, or I could go with the Fusso. I've got the old one there. Is that the old one? I've got the new one. Is that the new one or the old one? I'm lucky enough to have two bottles of the old one, which can last, you know, 12 months. I could prep it and then put the Fusso on and then like maintain it, you know, just with a detail spray or booster or whatever. I could do that. I like using triple as well. That's really appealing to me. I would probably not use these so much, even though I can see the place. I wouldn't go with the coating. So hopefully, guys, hopefully there's been something there that I've told you that's useful. You might not have known, or you might have an opinion on it. It might change your opinion. Quick detailers, ceramic shampoos, spray and rinses, spray waxes, spray sealants, ceramic coatings, sealants, liquid waxes, hybrid waxes, organic waxes, glazes, primers, pre-wax cleansers, areas, all-in-ones, pure abrasives. Red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. Meat and potatoes, shepherd's pie. I love that. I love that one. Okay, that's 47 minutes of waffle. My throat's going. I hope that was useful. Don't forget to subscribe. What's your favourite form of protection? Who's still left? Who's made it to 47 minutes without ducking out? How can you talk about detailing products for 47 minutes with very little prep? I just wrote the list of all the products, you know, all the different formats. I don't know. I don't know if that's a skill or something more concerning. Take care. See you soon. Bye. Doug.